Welcome to Pop Culture Redemption!
Sup?
We back at it again, folks.
With the white vans.
I don't have any shoes on right now.
Wow.
And my AC is still on.
Oh, no.
Let's restart.
We're going to pause and be right back. And through the magic of editing, we're back. We've already made a cut. All right. Well, hello. Welcome again to Pop Culture Redemption. My name is Connor.
My name's Jake. You didn't seem very sure about that.
Connor Gibson.
I'm Jordan Summers, and I am the embodiment of all your intrusive thoughts. You should be ashamed of yourself.
That's a good one.
But I thought we didn't have to live in shame anymore.
Yeah, well, I'm here, so you do.
We need that. This is where we need that. The FBI.
FBI, open up!
All right. Well, again, we're Pop Culture Redemption. We're crazy, and we're here to help the church have a better vision about God's presence and work in popular culture.
And we have fun doing it.
Heck yeah. Absolutely. We have a new episode that drops every other Tuesday, and congratulations. It is the other Tuesday. If you would, that would be helpful for us. You could rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. Wherever you're listening to this on, just go ahead, hit that thumbs up button, hit a check mark. I don't know what are the
5 stars.
The plus. Hit them all. Hit all the buttons, all the good buttons.
And hey, if you listened to last podcast and you waited for this one, I want you to pat yourself on the back. You made it 2 weeks.
We're proud of you.
Good job.
If you want some content in between, you should check out our social medias.
Wow. On Instagram and Facebook?
Yeah.
Oh, where do they search for that?
Pop Culture Redemption.
It's a great title.
It's a good title.
It's a good title.
Man, we should make a podcast with that title.
You know what? Let's do it right now.
Okay, cool.
So today's episode is going to be on the cob.
Stop it.
So,
and
audience,
it's also brought to you by the letter P.
It is, but let me explain the on the cob first.
It's not a good idea.
I'm trying to start something here. All right, I'm trying to start a movement. On the cob, listen, if you eat corn, what's better, in the can or on the cob?
On the cob.
On the cob. So if it's good, if it's great, it's on the cob. If it's bad,
it's canned.
It's in the can. So if you hear me say on the cob, that means it's great. And I think you all should start doing it too. Let's start a movement, people.
I'm not in the stroller for that one.
That's not what that means. That's not what that one means. One phrase at a time. We'll fill them in on being in the stroller the next episode.
I feel like I'm in a stroller every time I'm on this podcast.
Now that I've explained a bit for the audience, I don't think you're supposed to do that, but I did. Today's episode is going to be on the cob. Why is it going to be on the cob, Jordan?
Because today's podcast is brought to you by the letter P. Brought to you by the letter P.
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 P for what?
P for pastor.
Pastor.
P for Priscilla.
Priscilla.
Pastor Priscilla P. Poettker.
Pastor Priscilla Poettker!
Or P cubed, as I like to.
P cubed. Everyone, welcome back to the show. Pastor Priscilla Poettker.
If you were an MC P cubed, like, I'm just saying.
Ooh,
like, you got your hip-hop career.
There we go.
MC P cubed. Or...
Little cube.
She just keeps like wandering to the mic thinking, do I get to talk now? How about now? Because we are not giving you a clear setup at all. Priscilla, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here.
And now that you've talked, it's time for the theme song.
Pop Bears Beats Battlestar.
Stay on target.
You can't handle the truth.
Stay on target.
It's over 9,000! What, 9,000?
With great power comes great responsibility. There's only one God, man. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that.
All right. Well, again, Priscilla, thanks for saying yes to this.
I don't really know what I said yes to. But let's see what happens.
That's right.
It's fair. The last time you were on, it was only episode 3.
It was a great episode.
It was a good one.
There's a Barbie episode.
It's why it's the best one of them all.
It's true. It's true. Jake's just rolling his eyes. No. So
it was
today,
the pinkest podcast we had.
What?
It was the pinkest podcast we've had.
That's true.
Also
Not
fair.
really saying much, though.
Again, brought by the letter P. right?
For pink.
Pink.
Got you.
Priscilla's favorite color. Pink.
Pastor
how'd
Priscilla
you know
Poettker's
that?
favorite
How
color
did
is
I
pink.
know
How
that?
did you know
I
that?
don't know. It's like we played a game last night or something where you asked me to give you a pink piece that I had grabbed for something. Hey, can I borrow that pink piece so I can have all my pieces be pink? I was like, okay, yeah, sure. That's fine.
It's like
It was actually one of the
song.
things when we were like dating and talking about getting married and stuff like that is she wants everything in the kitchen being pink. Everything. All utensils.
There you go.
All the appliances.
Girls got to know what
All
she
the
wants
pans.
and like. So
That's right. So, Priscilla, I imagine a lot of our audience knows who you are.
do they?
For those who maybe don't, do you have a maybe a summary or a short story, some anecdotes
A
To give-
spoken word slam.
for yourself?
I feel like everyone has already said all of them. My name is Priscilla.
Heck yeah.
I'm a pastor.
Nailed it.
Wow.
I like the color pink.
Crazy.
And pigs. I'll add another P in there.
Because they're pink.
Oh, nice.
Well, because just pigs are really smart and they're great. Let's see. Oh yeah, and a reminder that Jake is my husband, not my brother.
We did have somebody ask that once at church, and it's like,
was
do we
awkward.
really look that much alike?
Yeah,
the
just in case you
glasses.
haven't seen us next to each other, Jake's white. I'm not. And I'm very short. Jake is not. So there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, that's
Also,
fair.
really, I love Jesus. Okay, like let's make sure anything that I say after this point, I'm sorry if it doesn't prove this, but I love Jesus. I really do.
Disclaimer up front. Disclaimer up front.
It's smart.
Well, today's podcast is an emergency podcast. And the
Yes.
reason why I call it an emergency podcast is because Inside Out 2 is what we're covering today. And it is such a big deal right now in our culture that we last week actually recorded a different episode, Dune Part 1, with Kim Evangelista, who's also been on the podcast before. And we decided to bump that podcast back another week. So that podcast will come out on July 16th. This one's coming out on July 2nd because Inside Out, again, such a big deal in our culture. And so, Priscilla, thank you for saying yes and doing all the homework and getting with us in like a 3-day turnaround. We were like, we should really do an Inside Out 2.
Whose suggestion was it to do that movie, dear?
I guess it was mine.
Oh, that's where you got that idea, Jake?
Yeah.
Oh, so you didn't even tell them?
No,
like
No,
that.
I took
did.
full credit, but now I wanted to officially and publicly give you the brownie points so that I could get some brownie points.
Gotcha. No, because I saw how big it was. That it was okay. So Barbie was the last one that I got to be on here, and
was
it
a
was
big deal.
bigger than Barbie. So I was like, "That's a big deal if it was bigger than Barbie."
It's a big deal. So here's the Inside Out 2 facts. Here's the facts. So this movie is still in theaters when this podcast gets released. It was originally released on June 14th, which at recording of this, that was 2 weeks ago. It has already reached over $900 million box office worldwide. 400 and some in the United States and 400 and some worldwide.
That's kind of nuts.
900 million. And will probably be over the $1 billion point by the time this weekend's over. So
Yeah.
by the time this podcast comes out, it will probably be over. It will have already grossed $1 billion, making Inside Out 2 the fastest animated movie ever to get to $1 billion in the box
Wow.
office. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. The cast, I'm just going to name, is Amy Poehler plays Joy. And the rest of the cast is great. But they're not as big name as Amy. So I'm just going to go with the one. I was like, is that girl from Parks and Rec? Yes, it is.
I don't think I can ever see Joy or hear her the same way again after you told me that.
Yeah.
Like, man, that makes so much sense, but you have to tell me.
Did you know there's an Office character in this movie?
No.
Oh, when I heard this character's voice, I was like, oh,
Wait, who was it?
Sadness was, do you know?
What?
Was Phyllis.
Oh, I was going to.
Voiced by Phyllis. I was like, that's Phyllis from The Office.
There was a moment
That's amazing.
that I thought that a different actor could have successfully played Anger. I will give you a hint. He was in Haunted Mansion.
Please tell me it's Danny DeVito.
Yes.
Could
Could you imagine Danny DeVito
Because he would
as
just
Anger?
pull out his what was the half goat character from
Phil?
Hercules? Yeah,
Yeah.
Phil from Hercules. He'd just pull that guy out.
That's right. Hercules. All right, we're diving into our normal rejoice, reject, redeem format here. So we're starting off with rejoice. We're here to rejoice what's good. What does this movie show that's true, that's good, that's right, that's noble, that's pure, it's whatever, that we think points us to the Lord. Jordan, you have been selected.
I think what I rejoice in this movie is coming to a mature and nuanced understanding of yourself.
Ooh.
We aren't entirely bad. We don't always do what's right. And being able to walk with those things in tension is crucial to adulthood. If you grab one or the other of really any if you grab any one-dimensional identity of who you are or what you think you are or who you say you are, that leads to really, really bad places. Like there's not a good outcome of that when you're doing that. And I think this movie does a really good job of admitting that we're not perfect and we don't pretend that like, oh yeah, I do bad stuff, but whatever, everybody does bad stuff. And it doesn't brush it under the rug. It doesn't sweep it under the rug. It doesn't brush it away, right? It takes that and it says, yeah, that needs to be mourned. That needs to be addressed. That we need to reconcile, like we need to wrestle with those things and reconcile them with the fact that sometimes we do manage to do what's right. We manage to get it right too. And we have to be able to hold those things in tension. That's, again, healthy for adulthood. It's part of growing up.
Yeah, no, it's like how the identity, the sense of self that she ended up with was one that kept shaping and forming as she kept going on, rather than just the one belief, which I was scared of from the very beginning, the I'm a good person. Dumb.
I wanted to say, side note, I think this was a really good movie. Both Inside Outs felt like great episode to an old animated kids show. Like just the way that both of the movies were written, they were entertaining. They had a point to them. They knew what the thing was going to be about. It didn't get stale. It didn't get boring. They could still do more. And I because when you think of old children's TV, they had episode after episode and after episode after episode. So how do you take these? And it's the same thing with any sitcom or any long. Like any show, right? How do you have the same cast of characters, maybe introduce a couple new ones? How do you take that cast of characters in the same setup, right? Or the same environments? How do you take that
Structure?
And then,
like the same structure?
How even similar structures. How do you take that and continue to do something with it again and not get stale, not get boring? Because we live in this time of everything's just being redone, right? But this movie is proof that you can take something and do a new thing in the same universe. Like you can do something new and beautiful and good with it again. So I just want to rejoice that.
I was telling Priscilla that I want to see, I don't know if this would be Inside Out 4 or something, but I want to see Riley in her 20s struggling to pay bills.
Might be coming to a theater near you in 2027. All right. Priscilla, how about you? What do you rejoice?
So I just have to say one of the things that made me laugh, as most of the emotions are about to crash land, and I think it was fear that pulls out a parachute and they don't crash land, they land safely, and they're asking like, "You have a parachute?" And he's like, "Of course I have a parachute. Why don't you?" I was like, you know what? Now I really think I need a parachute just to have. But also makes sense for someone who has the fear of like everything. Like, why not have something to help you with your fears? Like, full circle for me and my fears. No, but there's also a part where closer to the beginning, well, yeah, before even the new emotions are introduced, Joy is trying to do her new little function of sending off emotions that she doesn't think are needed to be kept in the full vault. And she's going down to this newer area that's introduced. And Joy doesn't know if Sadness doesn't know if she wants to go with Joy because she doesn't want to mess it up. She doesn't want anything to go wrong. And Joy's like, no, wherever I go, you go. And I really loved that piece of going somewhere with someone. But also then Joy asked, have I ever steered you wrong? Like, why wouldn't I take you? And then Sadness was like, literally, yes, you have. that conversation, which is really interesting to have between a joy and sad emotion, this back and forth, like, of course you've led me wrong, of course you've led me astray, but wherever you go, I go. This idea that really our feelings are okay. They're not evil. There's not these things that have to be separated. You can't get fixed on this idea that one feeling has to be felt alone and it always belongs alone. I think we very much so in our culture now have said that feelings almost aren't allowed to be felt, which is opposite of what they literally are. And it's almost become this idea that emotions are almost a sin and they're almost this bad thing that you have to stay away from. And it's actually a book that I most recently have read by Jenny Allen, which now, of course, I'm not going to remember what it's actually called.
Untangle
Your Emotions. That's right. Thank you. That she really is just saying feelings are not a sin. Emotions are not a sin. They're meant to be felt. And in this weird way, they're going to have these conversations with each other because really they worked together to create what we have in all of Psalms is all of these emotions and feelings that go back and forth between sadness and joy and all these different things. So that is definitely something that I'm rejoicing in that.
Yeah, it was really good.
Solid. I want to really rejoice. The belief fuels the sense of self. Kind of. Because in the movie, it was what was her belief for like most of it was I'm a good person. And it's kind of taught the thing of how we view ourselves is kind of identity, but I want to flip that on its head, and what we believe about God becomes who we become. I don't remember what theologian said it, but I got it through John Mark Comer, where it said we become our image of God. So if you view if your image of God is very aloof, standoffish, and only comes in for disciplinary stuff, then you will turn into a very bitter, standoffish, and judgmental person. If you believe in a God of love that is here with us, then you will become that same image. Like, I love that all of the memories that pour into like our experiences, everything that we experience God to be, everything that we see around in our lives, because people are made in the image of God, like that fuels our sense of self. We become who we think God is.
Yeah. Was it Tozer? A.W. Tozer?
Probably. It sounds like a Tozer
There's
thing.
something about...
Actually, I think it is a Tozer.
The most important thing about you is what you think about God.
Tozer.
Or I don't remember what the end of that is exactly, but I think it's Tozer. Yeah.
Was it toes or hands?
Mm-hmm.
Knees or Tozer?
Head, shoulder, knees, and Tozer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Head, shoulders, lead, and hosen.
Now I'm only thinking about that. I'm not thinking about the point you made. Dang it. Okay, I get to go last in this rejoice segment. One is I absolutely rejoice when they buried ethnomusicologists.
We're so sorry, Bishop Mackey.
Everyone go hug a musicologist near you. If you're like, I have no idea what an ethnomusicologist is, just go Google it, and good luck spelling it.
Actually, I'll do one better. Priscilla, can you explain what an ethnomusicologist is?
Wow, Mackey didn't teach you very well, did he?
Jake, would you like a crack at it?
Is a person who studies the music of other cultures and ethnicities.
Pretty much. This is pretty much the gist of it.
Because I paid attention in music history 3.
And they keep saying Bishop Mackey.
I did too, Bishop Mackey. I just don't remember things.
Right. Bishop Mackey, friend of the show. We love you. Thank you for
our resident musicologist
being on our sole episode in season 1, and we'll be on a upcoming PopCR episode soon. So we're excited about that too.
I do want to say that there is a distinction between a music historian and a musicologist.
Ooh, okay. What's the difference?
I'm going to let you guys figure that one out for yourselves.
Ooh.
Go do your research.
I was hoping there was a joke there.
No. There is legitimate
That's kind of how you
difference.
led into it.
You kind of set it up as a joke.
Well, everything I set up as a joke.
What?
Exactly.
Which is why I am a horrible wingman.
All right, so my for real rejoice, that was a fun, that was funny. My for real rejoice is how the movie depicts, and I get to go last and rejoice because pre-show they were like, that's kind of a reject, so we're just going to have you blend rejoice, reject. I rejoice how the movie depicts that when we chase happiness and positivity, kind of like the character Joy does in this movie, it often leads us to act more like denial than joy. When things go sideways, when things don't go well, when things are going poor, right? We see what happens to Joy, the character Joy, what happens to her when things are going poorly and she's trying to be positive. Got to stay positive. You know how hard it is to be positive, 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 positive when things are nuts. And it plays as denial. And it suppresses other valid emotions, right? That we need to process and work through. So I rejoice how that was displayed because I was like, yes, that's how that goes. That's exactly how that goes. And I reject when we do that.
Nice. Solid.
So solid. Give me a break for that.
Hey everybody, it's Jordan here. I'm editing the podcast for your sweet, wonderful, beautiful ears right now. I just wanted to remind you that you can go to patreon.com/popcultureredemption to listen to awesome extra content. You can listen to Connor talk about songs that preach, or you can listen to me talk about video games that preach and the gospel according to video games. Go check that out, and we hope to engage with you over on Patreon. And now, back to the pod.
Kit Kat bar. You kind of smushed my bit. You threw off my groove.
But I'm going to just put the end of that at the beginning of the next one.
All right, so we've rejoiced. Hooray! Now let's reject. It's time to enter into the rejection station. Get in the dungeon. And I get to start us off. I get to be critical first. Here's my question. Why are only negative emotions portrayed in this movie?
Because that's all there is, bro.
Other than joy, here are the other emotions that are...
Haven't you listened to My Chemical Romance?
Here are the other emotions that are embodied in this film. Fear, anger, sadness, disgust, anxiety, embarrassment, envy, and whatever that other word is, ennui. Yeah, whatever.
I'm not hearing any negative emotions.
Yeah.
Those are all good,
The
bro.
only one that might not be negative was the one that appeared, nostalgia.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if nostalgia is good or bad. We could have, that is a whole separate thing we're not going to talk about. My question is, why are only negative emotions portrayed in this movie?
That's a great question.
I feel like this is a leading question.
No, I don't.
I think,
okay, you're not?
It's not a leading question.
I feel I have emotions about this.
Which ones? Are they positive or negative?
The thing is that's all that's what we've been taught to look at is the negative. We can't see any of the positive. Like, heck, can we even actually on the spot think of a positive emotion besides joy? Because really all we're ever corrected in is our negative emotions. Or those are the ones that are the loudest. So that those are the only ones people see, then, that must be the only emotion you have. When you're angry, you make a big deal about it. I know you're angry. But if I'm just sitting here and I'm actually happy and enjoying things, you're probably not going to point it out and tell me good job being happy. You're going to look at me and be like, you're angry and you shouldn't be angry. You should fix that emotion.
I have an answer, but I feel like it's going to get in the way of your next question since you kind of told us beforehand.
Just go ahead and pull the audience behind the curtain, Jake.
Okay, I'm going to let Jordan answer though first.
Okay. Can I say counterpoint? What if some of those emotions aren't actually negative?
Sure.
Like sadness. I don't think that's actually a negative emotion.
Ooh, that's a good point.
I think sadness is actually really crucial because nobody should feel joy if someone they love just died. Sadness is absolutely crucial at a time like that, and that's a really good and healthy emotion. It might not feel good, right? Well, it actually kind of, it's cathartic, right? But I think that's kind of I think that's what they're trying to do with the emotions. I think they're trying to take them and put a positive spin on them. Like, oh, you're going to feel disgust when you reach your hand backwards thinking you're going to put it in your bag and you touch a dirty diaper or something, right?
Who's just leaving dirty diapers around?
People at stadiums.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. Moving on.
Who have babies. People have babies.
But, that all that to say, I think it depends on how you're interpreting those emotions and what you're doing with them. I think is part of it. But it is a good question. It actually might be another question. Why is it that we have a negative connotation with all the rest of those emotions? Right?
Much better question.
Well, I don't know about better, but maybe just another question.
That's another good question.
Anyway,
my thought: why are there no other positives? Because they all stem from joy. Like confidence stems from being content and joyful with yourself and who you are, accepting your flaws. Like bravery, you're happy with, like, you know your strengths and you step out because you're not, like, does it make sense? Like, maybe my thought would be because most of the other good ones just kind of stem from the experience of a form of joy.
Yeah.
Confidence plus anger equals pride?
Ooh, okay.
I don't know if that's true or not, but
Just thinking out loud.
I am.
There's an Ed Sheeran song about that somewhere.
There's an Ed Sheeran song about everything.
Probably not about that specifically, but about thinking out loud. I think just hearing you all kind of process through this, my own processing, I think sometimes we think good is the absence of bad. You know, when you're experiencing, I'll still call them negative emotions, and I think they have important roles, but negative in the aspect of, you know, I don't think we don't live our life to desire to feel these things.
Yeah.
For the most part. You know what I mean? I do think they're important, and we should feel our feelings when we have those things, because we live in a broken world. Absolutely. And I think sometimes, like what I think you talked about a little bit, Priscilla, when you were processing through it too, was oftentimes we think, I will be happy if I can eliminate everything that's bad, instead of how do I live into joy, into peace, into contentment, into hope, into love. You know, like all maybe a lot of the fruit of the Spirit. Oh, fruit of the Spirit. Which leads me to my next question. Is joy an emotion? You know, I don't know if I have a good answer for this one. Because like emotion, like more, like maybe some, I just kind of went with some opposites of like the other emotions that were showed. So you have like maybe some more like positive ones, or have positive connotation, be happiness, contentment, pride, awe, anticipation, excitement, calmness. Those are some like of the other side of the coin emotions from what's depicted in the movie. Is joy an emotion? I don't know. So, audience, there you go. I've taken enough time in this segment. I'm just going to leave you with, you can chew on that for a little while. All right, is joy an emotion? All right, Priscilla, your turn.
Thanks for that one.
You're welcome.
That's great to follow up that. So I kind of want to go with your whole idea. There's all these emotions that we have, and we see what we can look by just looking is a lot of negative right off the bat. And that's kind of the problem. That's the issue here. All of a sudden, when anxiety comes in, is that's all we can see, all of the bad stuff that could possibly go wrong. Here's all the things that could happen. I have to make sure I'm ready for all of them until we break down. And I also now need to bottle up anything and everything else. I have to, like you mentioned earlier, there's the denial. I have to deny that things are happening. I have to suppress the emotions, which even at the beginning, Joy was doing. Anything that wasn't full of joy, she thought she had to suppress and make sure Riley didn't feel those things or remember those things. But I had an interesting connection with all of this, because when we get into this space where we feel like we have to continue to deny things, we have to bottle things up, we get into a headspace where this is what we have to be, this is what we have to do. Are we not then doing this also within our church, whether it's our church walls or our church as a whole, Big C Church? This is the language that we speak, this is how we understand things, this is what we do, so anybody looking from the outside can't understand or feel welcome in those spaces. Are we creating something that is so specific and towards just us that, of course, people who don't go to church on a regular basis, or maybe even go a little bit further, the people who are hurt and are denying that God exists, or are hurt by people who are Christ followers, that could never be a direction that they'd want to go, because we've created this essentially bottling up in a Christian world. I can only feel these certain things as a Christ follower. I can only do these things as a Christ follower. I can only be this as a Christ follower. That's not attractive to a lot of people, especially when they start to compare I live in the real world, Christians. This is what actually happens in my life. So yes, I'm going to do it this way. Instead of, as Christians, being like, no, I actually do still feel all of these things. I still struggle with all of these things. but I have access to a community. I have access to people. I have access to a Jesus who loves me so much more than any of the things that I ever do or feel. Actually, Jesus feels the things with me, and it's kind of cool to have that. But we don't really show that when we decide we're going to just bottle it. We're going to keep it in secret. All of the things.
Yeah, I think we do the same thing with our theology sometimes too.
Ooh, okay. Unpack that, please.
Well, it's like you were saying there's this tendency with people say, okay, you can only feel certain ways in the church, right? And I think we do that a lot with theology and belief and say, you can only be a part of this and be a part of our church or whatever if you believe the same way we do, if you think the same way we do. And in fact, I think we self-select into churches that think and believe the way that we do. And I'm not sure if that's actually good or healthy. I don't think it is. So like to your point, I think we do that with our emotions and with our theology.
Yep. It's almost like that's why we do this podcast. To let people know, like, hey, Inside Out 2 doesn't have the Bible in it, but you can still learn from it. Crazy.
Okay, so this actually really just plays into my second reject. Because the other part that I really didn't like was how I loved and hated at the same time. Because they showed Riley going through a panic attack or an anxiety attack. Honestly, could have probably gone either way at the point of where she was at. But it shows her going through this attack, and then it shows her as she's going through all these different emotions in her mind, and then it goes through her grounding process, and then it goes back into her wanting to receive joy, like at the end, just like longing for that joy to come back. And beautiful reality, yes, but also in that reality, again, as Christians, we like to make things look so much easier than they actually are, or we just forget to allow people to see the hard. To go through your first panic or anxiety attack does not look that pretty. Like, it does not look that pretty. It is not that fast of a process, and you're definitely not going to be ready to talk to somebody and process that process right after it happens. And you're also not going to know right off the bat what you need to ground yourself. Like, it beautifully shows how Riley started listening and touching and probably like smelling and seeing. But those are things that even I, as a person who has struggled with anxiety, did not learn by just having an anxiety attack, and now I knew how to get through it. So I just really, again, like, great job showing what's possible, but at that age, that's not going to happen that fast. And as Christians, we don't learn those things that help us through our hardships that quickly. We even as Christians, even if we were Christians all our life, there's still things that we're learning and growing in that doesn't just come naturally, and that's not going to be a beautiful process. It maybe never will, but we're really good as Christians at covering up those ugly parts of the process.
I think it also showed that you can learn how to do it on your own, and I think that's bullcrap.
Can I counterpoint that just a little bit?
Or at least that quickly. On your own.
Well, and that's the key, on her own. Can I just counter that maybe that she had, I don't know, someone pouring into her,
right? That
said, hey, this is what can happen. This is what this looks like. Maybe she has seen it before. Right. Maybe she has family that's seen it. So just to say, like, to your point, like at that age, having that happen for the first time, like there's like the way like how smoothly comparatively, right, that she was able to transition through all of that. Yeah, that's not realistic. That's not how it's going to happen. And we probably don't want to communicate to kids or to anybody else that, oh, it's just that easy, right?
Just stop being sad.
Yeah, just stop being sad. Kick sad out. Send sadness to the back of the mind. No. But I do think that having people, I'm speaking to parents and authority figures here, being able to walk through your young ones before they get to that point of like, hey, just so you know, this is a thing that can happen, and here's some ways that you can walk through that really tricky and difficult process, and you're not broken. You're going to be okay through this, and like setting them up to be able to go into that a little bit better. But I completely agree that it was
It just didn't suggest that she had ever seen or experienced or been told how to do it.
Right,
and it
absolutely.
just showed that she magically did it on her own without knowing what it was.
Which I would also like to say that it's impressive that they were able to communicate the panic attack in general.
Oh yeah, is very accurate.
Yeah, I think Priscilla's your larger point of the church. Like, I need to grow. We need to grow in our. I wouldn't say comfort with like showing our messiness, but our vulnerability.
Yeah,
like in being willing and able to be vulnerable, and to realize that that's not a sign of weakness, but it is the path to our deepest joy and healing and belonging.
Question.
Oh.
Vulnerability versus authenticity. Would you say the vulnerability comes like at the moment, and authenticity is more in the just being true to who you are?
I don't have a good answer for you. For me, the connotation of vulnerability makes it seem like you are more willing to be like you're in a risky situation. Like you're taking a risk. Like you're disclosing something that can backfire. Like someone could use that against you or hurt you or whatever. Whereas authenticity doesn't have that connotation for me, but has a similar thing where you're being real with whatever it is like I'm authentically telling you what I think, like I'm not, and so that's the connotation for me. I don't really know what the difference other than that for me.
That's good.
Word up.
Cool. I just want to reject one simple thing, and I had a whole thing, but now that I'm rereading my notes, it just looks really distracted. I just want to reject the idea that we're fueled and run solely by our emotions. Because like there were the scenes, and it happened in both movies, where like the emotions are fighting over the board, and so you see like in the very first scene, she goes from like, I don't even remember which one acted first, but it was like anger acted, and then fear acted, and then she just completely switched lanes, and like it's almost like someone flipped a switch. And I get it, it's a cartoon, they're supposed to over exaggerate stuff, but like I feel like that's how we think we're supposed to act. It's like we've overcorrected in culture from don't talk about anything you're feeling to like, oh, but this is just who I am because it's how I'm feeling right now. And like, no. God didn't just give you a heart. He also gave you a body, mind, and soul. And when you reject one of those, or you ignore one of those, you ignore that part of the image of God in you. So if you're only going by your head and acting by what's logical and rational, then you forget the heart. You forget the heart, and or if you only act in the heart, you forget the body and the mind. Like there's just, we are not just emotional beings. We are multifaceted. We are not run by our emotions. And Paul would encourage us to take every thought captive and to feel, but not let it own us.
Yeah. Who is the puppet master of your whole self?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is it your emotions? Is it your own logic? Is it your desires? Or is it Jesus?
I think the Psalms show us that we can take how we're feeling to Jesus.
100%.
And it's not like I'm feeling this, so I have to act like this right now. So if I'm angry, then all bets are off. Like I'm not following Jesus. So you're just going to hear what I'm hearing, what I'm saying. But like I can take that anger and I can put it like he might be like, dude, it's okay to be mad. Like be mad. There's a lot of times where you should be mad. Or a lot of times you should be sad. If I'm not sad when I've lost a loved one, that's not good. But also, we can't let our emotions consume us the same way anxiety consumed Riley.
Yeah. And now I think about it, I don't like calling Jesus a puppet master, but like, now that
but is he the master of puppets?
Chew on that thing, because we're not just puppets,
Yeah.
But
we do have life to us.
That's right.
Yeah.
We have autonomy and consciousness, and we have to. What'd you say?
Yeah, that was going to bother both of us until we heard that one.
That's the second time.
That was so close. He was going to just edit it out.
So that was this. So he made a joke about Master of Puppets by Metallica. That's the second time in the past 24 hours that joke has been made in my life, that somebody's referenced Master of Puppets.
Gotcha.
It was not important.
This is what happens when two
That's
people.
okay.
Like, Jordan, you can multitask, right? On things. This is what happens when two multitaskers do a podcast with two one-track minders.
Multitasking isn't a thing, but that's not what we're talking about right now.
Yes, it is, and I do it every day. Moving on.
It's more like a jump between tasks.
All right, Jordan, bring this reject train back to the station. What you got?
Chugga, vroom, vroom. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Okay. Before I just want to briefly touch on the topic that we were just having with the what does it look like in the logic of Inside Out if like all the emotions were just like, we're just gonna let Riley have a week to herself. None of us are gonna take control. We're gonna take like a week vacation. Every single one of us emotions. Nobody's gonna we're locking down. Like nobody's gonna have access to the board. Like what does Riley do and look like during that whole thing? Is she just like
she's in a coma?
I don't know about that, but because like she was still doing stuff and acting on her own without people doing stuff on the board. Right? Like she was still doing things on occasion. Yeah, the board like
is that like the scene like the movie Click with Adam Sandler when he just hits fast forward?
I don't know.
Did y'all see that movie?
I do.
Okay.
I know the movie. I don't think I've ever seen it, but I know what you're talking about.
Anyway.
Isn't this what... Do I want to go there?
Yes.
Isn't this what it might be without then the Holy Spirit, without allowing the Holy Spirit to be a part? If we are created in the image of God, we are created with all emotions. The Holy Spirit speaks and moves through us, and we have free will, which I think is what you were trying to say earlier that you didn't get to. Then without allowing the emotions to be present, allowing it to be, again, all of who we are, then I think that's when we lose track of who's actually in control.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Anyways, what you got for us, Jordan?
Okay, here's my reject. I want to reject the teacher's response to Riley and her friends, quote unquote, acting up. The way she got on to them was super mad, like, this is no time to play around. And okay, that's how you frustrate kids, not how you get them excited about what you're trying to teach them. You want a kid to learn something quick, you get them excited about the thing they're learning. I teach music lessons, and every time I see big steps in progress, it's because the kids are excited about what they're learning and they want to go home and do the thing that they're learning. When I've seen people like really passionate about anything that they're not very well versed in, that passion drives them to learn more about it and do more with it because they're excited about it. You don't get excited about something by turning it into this, we're not here to play and you need to straighten up and like...
But hockey's a game.
A game.
You play
exactly. You play it. Yeah. And honestly, I want to reject sports culture because of that. Like I think there's so much over competitiveness. Like we remove the aspect of enjoying the game itself and playing the game so much that it becomes this tribal, like, I have to be a part of this team and I have to win because this is now a part of my identity and I want to identify as a winner, right? Like Riley does at the end, that she identifies like, I'm a winner. Or no, not at the end, at the beginning. She had one of those strands. One
of the like good, quote unquote good beliefs.
Yeah, was I'm a winner. And I have struggles about whether or not that's a good belief or not. But besides that point, like I just think that some of those things in sports culture need to be challenged. I mean, this is one of the reasons I didn't sports when I was a youngin'. I heard a story about a woman in Texas whose daughter went out for cheer, and her daughter didn't make cheer. So this woman went and murdered the head cheerleader, who did make head cheerleader.
I'm sorry. So many steps were skipped. So many steps were skipped there. What?
There was a girl who the cheer tryouts, right? One girl made head cheerleader. The other girl didn't make head cheerleader.
Yeah,
the girl
following.
who didn't make it, her mother went and killed the.
Yeah, no, I'm tracking. I followed this, but I feel like the mom skipped a couple steps.
Well, I mean, I think she took a step that she should. Yeah,
Like, I know what's going to get my daughter in the cheerleading team. Murder.
There's what we do when we don't know what to do with our emotions.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think we need to be cautious about. I think we need to be cautious about how we are influencing youth, how we're influencing kids. I think we need to be very intentional and really think about what is happening in this person's life right now, because it has the potential to massively shape people's lives. Right? Not that we should be fearful of how we're doing it, but that we should be intentional, even when we're annoyed with them, even when they're being little stinkers or big stinkers. Also, we don't get to choose our identity. We don't.
That's given to us.
Yeah, that identity is given to us, and that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've touched on.
Can I just add just one little baby tweaky there?
Go.
Our identity is given to us, but it's shaped over the course of our lives. As we continue walking deeper and deeper with Jesus, we become more like Jesus and become more like the person he designed us to be.
I mean, yes, that I don't think that our identity doesn't change. Our identity is simply who we are. Who we are is who we are. But who we how, and I'll get to the responsibility of what we do with our identity. I'll come back to that in the redeem section. But yes, there is a becoming as well. I won't say much more about that. I do want to say that I'm a little annoyed with newer Pixar movies, and I reject this a little bit too. With newer Pixar movies seeming a little more preachy compared to older Pixar movies, which were primarily entertaining rather than trying to communicate a message. Like Toy Story 2. There was no message in those movies. They were just good movies.
Bet. Let's do it for the next episode. There's no message in it at all.
We can't. We're doing Dune, Jake. I would love to do Toy Story. But if you want to shoehorn a message into that, that's different than there being an intended.
Maybe later.
Where else are you going to learn how to get your angry eyes? You uncultured swine.
Angry eyes.
All right, that's a good place to take a break. So we've finished rejecting. Let's take a break, and we'll come back with the redeem shortly.
Life is hard, and it's impossible for us to figure it out on our own. We need the work and perspective of others to help us along the journey. That's why on Patreon, we have Jake's Book Club, The Archives, where everyone can bring their perspectives together to learn a little more about the world, our faith, each other, and ourselves. We also have guest interviews, sneak peeks into the lives of others to continue to broaden our own perspective. We'd love for you to continue to journey with us. Head on over to patreon.com/popcultureredemption, and we'll hope to see you there. Now, back to the episode.
All right. I'm going first. I was almost like, who wants to go first? It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me.
You are
the
problem.
But my redeem is what's the bridge point to the gospel that we want to take out of this movie? My redeem is I'm actually not rejecting me. I'm rejecting anxiety. And that rhymed. And I'm so happy about it. Because here's the deal. Like depicted in this movie, anxiety wants to change everything about you and steal your joy. Oh. So Bible obviously has a lot to say about worrying and anxiety. Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow has enough trouble of its own. One of the Peters, I don't remember which one, says, cast your cares or your anxieties on the Lord because he cares for you. 1 Peter 1:7? Yeah.
It's 5:7.
5:7?
1 Peter 5:7.
Maybe. It's in there somewhere. Go look it up. Go look it up and fact check me. So, and then it says, fear not, 365 times? That's a common
all the time
thing that, one for every day of the year, and then
Except for
two
leap
on
day.
leap
On
year.
leap day, you should be very afraid.
Wait, leap year is one less. Just kidding.
It's
Because there's
one
an
more.
extra day leap year.
So on leap day, you should be very afraid.
Be afraid. Don't be afraid.
I
No, you just read the entire book of Proverbs.
Okay.
And similar to what's portrayed in this movie, anxiety is often a symptom of a deeper problem. Right? It's because anxiety is carrying all these new memories down to the core belief system of the movie. Right? And is putting them in there, and then she's plucking the string, and the string is saying, if I do this, then I'll be this. Right? Like one of them was, if I'm a Firehawk, part of the hockey team, I won't be alone, which I think is like her main fear going into that camp, right? Because her friends are going to a different school. She's going to be alone. She's make the team, so she's not alone. And anxiety. If I make the team, then I won't be alone. Right? That's the anxiety belief planted. And anxiety, similar again in this movie, says, let me protect you. But anxiety doesn't protect us. Anxiety only projects an endless amount of possibilities of an unknown future. And usually it's negative, right? It's the negative outcomes. It's the negative possibilities. It's, I don't know where this is going to go. And it imagines the worst. Anxiety. And we get stuck in fear of the future, of a future that we project in our brains that isn't actually what's going to happen, probably. Instead of trusting in the God who is the God of yesterday, today, and forever, right? Trusting in God who says, again, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow's enough trouble of its own. In that passage in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is talking about, look at the lilies of the field. They don't labor or spin, yet look at how they're clothed. You know, the birds of the air, Father feeds them. How much more so will he feed you, you of little faith? So, again, I think the way that this movie depicts anxiety is a great bridge point, is a great opportunity to say, hey, like if you're in a place where you are very anxious, I think that it can be really easy, super easy, because I find it easy, even as a believer, to get anxious about. I was listening to some podcast about the state of our like political system right now in the United States, and I started to get a little anxious, like because I was like, oh man, like things are really broken, things are messed up. I don't know where this is going to go, and kind of anxiety started rising up in me, and I kind of had to pause and say, wait, is my trust in my hope in the political system, in the Congress, in the president, in the whoever, or is it in the Lord, who I believe and I know is ultimately in control? And that brought a tremendous amount of peace to me as I look forward to the future, knowing that, hey, God's got it. And will it fall apart? Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. He knows, and it's going to be okay. So as we think about engaging with culture, I think that message can resonate with a lot of people who probably find themselves in periods and seasons of being very anxious about what can come.
To your point about the anxiety, projecting a fearful future, the annoying thing is that sometimes the anxiety is right and predicts the right future, predicts exactly what is going to happen and what does happen. You see that in the movie. You see that projection that anxiety has, and that idea of, oh, if we do this and this will happen. And one of those things happens when the coach gets onto her for goofing off with her friends. But even in the midst of that, we can trust the catcher. We can trust that in the end, we'll be okay because God is with us, because Jesus Christ is Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important with anxiety. Like the point with anxiety is it doesn't matter if the thing we're anxious about happens in worst case scenario or not, because ultimately we will be okay, period. End of story. Even if it doesn't happen the way we want or when we want.
Mm-hmm. Jacob.
So one, I think that I'm going to jump into mine a little bit differently, because to me, anxiety isn't necessarily like, it's an emotion, and God gives us emotions. So I don't think it's necessarily bad for what it's supposed to be for. Because what's helped me is seeing anxiety as a desire for something to change, or like a felt need for something to change. So like for me, it's like, It's like when I realize I haven't eaten all day, or I'm in a situation that really makes me feel uncomfortable or unsafe. Like that's the anxiety, right? Or like even the man, the state of our country, something needs to change. And then it helps. Like without the anxiety, would you have noticed oh, okay, I'm trusting in politics more than I am God. Like we need it. We need that to show us. So to me, it's like our emotions are there to show us. They're kind of like the dash lights on a car. They just tell you how the car is doing. And so anxiety for me is one of those things, which is not what I was going to talk about, but it's kind of related because the enemy likes to take what's good and pervert it. And so I wanted to talk about the difference between conviction and condemnation and what that looked like in this movie and what that can look like, or just wonder what it could look like in real life. Because for me, the beautiful moment was when that I think we can take to the world around us is what brought Riley out of her very accurately displayed anxiety attack. And this now enters into the book I just started reading because we packed all of our books and had to get new ones. So this book's called Don't Give the Enemy a Seat at Your Table by Louis Giglio, which was already like what is that? Like, that's just the title. It's a pretty good book so far. I'm only about halfway done with it at the time of this recording. It's just, I picked it up. It was a really good book for this time of my life. And yes, I started reading it because all of my John Mark Comer books are packed away in storage. And he did leave an endorsement on this book, but I didn't notice that till today. So that's not why I picked it up. Anyways, Giglio talks about how the enemy likes to do anything he can to get us to start listening to him. He promises a solution with every problem, and shocker, he never follows through. So I'm just going to, he entices us into giving us our desires, our every desire, without us even thinking about if the desire is actually what we want. And he gives us his solution to our problems. And then I'm just going to let Louis speak for himself. So this is a quote. He says, as soon as you eat the fruit and hit guilt, shame, and frustration, the enemy changes roles. He shifts from being the enticer and the promiser to becoming the accuser and the condemner. Far too often, we let him accuse us. We know we've done wrong, so we just mumble our agreement right along with the enemy. The same enemy who once enticed us with a promise is now crushing us with an accusation, and we agree with him. Instead, we should be screaming, shut up. You're the one who tried to convince me this is a great idea. I'm done with you. I'm a child of God, a new creation, and even when I sin, those facts don't change. And he finishes the section up. He says, condemnation is done from a posture of hate. Conviction is done from a posture of love. So when we recorded our last episode, and it's something I realize I've been saying a bit more often, so if you hang around me, you might have heard me say it, but I just said, I made we recorded it last week. This is an emergency podcast. You'll hear it in 2 weeks. I said the statement, God doesn't call me a sinner. Why should I? So I know, red flags, because Paul calls himself the chief of sinners. But the thing is, he didn't live like it. He didn't live his life under the accusations of Satan, believing every name that Satan called him, even though it was true. Paul was just admitting to his sins, but not living by them. Do we have any idea what this could look like if we were to live the same way? Because I have no idea, because I struggle to do that too. Because here's the thing. When I say that God doesn't call me a sinner, why should I? I'm not denying the fact that I am one. I have done the crimes, so therefore I am deserving of the times. But that title, sinner, that's what the devil calls me. And when he calls me that, he says that's all I can ever be, that I messed up. So instead of coming back to that table that God has prepared for me in the presence of my enemies, in the middle of the battle, in the middle of the shame and the struggle, that I should save God the trouble of having to endure through a meal with me. I'm no good. That's what the devil calls me. But you know what Jesus calls me? In the midst of my darkest moments, when I've fallen off the biggest horse and hit the rockiest of bottoms, he calls me son. He calls me loved. He calls me chosen and pure and covered by the blameless blood of Jesus. He calls me out of my grave, saying I'm not dead anymore, no matter how much I feel like it. So if we just stopped living by the names the devil calls us, and I don't mean by refusing to acknowledge our shortcomings and our sins, that's different. But if we don't answer to not good enough, right? Like Riley, or not smart enough, broken, unlovable, etc., and just got back up and reminded ourselves that Jesus still wants to sit with us and eat, what could happen to the world around us? How many more songs could I write if I didn't believe the lie that nobody cares about what I have to say? Right? So soapbox all summed up. Riley remembered who she was by kicking out the voice of the enemy. I think in spiritual senses, like anxiety was there, but the enemy took control of anxiety. We can, and Riley kicked out the voice of the enemy. He basically, like in Louis Giglio's language, she kicked the enemy out of the table. Like, get out of here if we don't need you here. We can do that too. What the devil accuses of us may be accurate, but we don't have to live under that identity. I know I'm a sinner. I know I mess up. I know I miss the mark, and I fail to meet that standard, but because of Jesus, I don't have to make up for it. I just have to keep going with him. I can't really snap.
Sorry, I'll snap.
That's just what the enemy tells you, Jake.
Okay, I can snap with my left hand, but it's not very loud, and I can't really, like, this is the best I got. Like, that's not really...
Snap.
That's not the, like, sample
Bro,
worthy
you don't
snap.
need the 4-ply snap. You leave the 4-ply to me. I got you covered, brother.
I got you.
Here, just let me stand up and my knees will do what my fingers can't.
It'd be my ankles. Good stuff, man. That was great. Jordan, what you got, bro?
Nothing that well thought out. I just have the responsibility of living into our God-given identity. I think Riley. Okay, so Riley has this idea, right? One of the things that is in her self-image, one of the things she has within that is I'm a good person. It can be dangerous, but also if we slightly modify that to I am called into being a good person, or I am called into goodness because my creator is good. That puts a positive spin to that whole thing. But she has that in the back of her mind, right? Even if let's say for a minute that is part of who Riley is, that she is a good person. Let's say that she takes that and that's part of her identity. She has a choice then to live into that identity, to actually act on it, or to reject it, to deny it, to push it away and live into something else, something that isn't her truest identity. And I think we as believers have a similar calling, that we are called to live into our identity, believers, as Christ followers. And not our calling is not to ask, what about their identity? What is their identity? Our calling is to not let our actions be dictated by other people's identity, but to be dictated by our own identity. You think of, the Good Samaritan. The question isn't who is my neighbor. The question is, who are you? Who am I?
Dang.
Who am I? Who is God calling me to be? What is God calling me to do? And walking in our truest identity as people who are redeemed, as people who are loved, as people who are forgiven, as people who are given grace, as people who have to learn how to forgive, as people who have to learn to repent, as people who have to learn to... as people who need to learn to be more self-aware. And to let other people help us along that process, which is called discipleship, by the way.
What? Crazy.
It's a crazy concept, right?
Yeah, because what's the response if you don't live the identity? Jonah?
Yeah, right. Yeah, Jonah is a good example. The Pharisees are a good example. I think there are people. Who is it? Who was the couple in Scripture? That not Priscilla.
Ananias and Sapphira.
Thank you, Ananias and Sapphira.
Acts chapter 9.
They were called into this community, into this identity, and they didn't live into that identity. Judas didn't live into his identity as a disciple. And I mean, even Adam didn't live into his identity as the man created him in the image of God. He did not live into that identity of the image of God. We are less human when we don't live into that identity. So I think Riley wrestling with her responsibility to live into that identity was present in the movie. And I think that's something that we should be aware of is like, oh, like I have, like, not only do I have this identity, but I have the responsibility to walk in it, to live in it.
I think my question for people in the world and those of us in the church as well, when we're like, oh, I want to be a good person. My question for that, whenever I hear somebody, if I'm having a conversation with somebody about identity, about faith, about any of that kind of stuff, and they're like, well, I think like if you just be a good person, it'll all work out in the end. I say, oh, why do you want to be a good person? Like,
yeah,
they're like, well, because, and then, you just kind of chase that, because a ton of authors, I'm sure, have made this point. C.S. Lewis makes it in Mere Christianity. When you make a moral claim of something like, I want to be a good person, you say, oh, what is good then? What is this? You're making a claim to something outside of yourself, right? That is good. Okay, well then that points to the fact that there is a being, there's someone who is defining what is good, someone who has created what is good. And that piece too fits in what you're talking about as far as identity as well, finding our good, our identity, our good identity, our true identity is in Christ. Like when we're in lockstep with him, we are living good lives. We're doing good things. We're loving people really well. And when we're not, then oftentimes we're not. I think you don't have to necessarily I don't think you have to be a Christian to do good things. But the good things aren't going to stack up to your salvation.
No, right? I was just going to follow that up with, I don't think that's in our ability to do. I think that's something the Holy Spirit helps us become. But our job is just to spend most of our life, as much time in our lives spending in the presence of the Holy Spirit, and to let him do the transforming work. Our job is to do whatever we can to stay there.
All right, we're getting close to the end here. And Priscilla, you get to like bring this puppet home right now. No, excited. It's a good puppy. There you go. That's right. We're so
Country Roads, take us home.
The final redeem, Priscilla. No pressure, but we're all counting on you. You got this.
Thanks.
Let us have it.
So I want to go for a string that I felt was at the back end of all of this. And obviously emotions were the front end of all of it. But something that I really feel like I can rejoice in, and things that I see constantly in our life, is what we surround ourselves with. Obviously that affect our emotions. At the very beginning-ish, Riley's getting ready to go to camp, and she suddenly freaks out. Like, this is the moment that now her new emotions are entering, and she's now freaking out. I almost lost the game last night because of a decision I made. So what if I mess it up and I do the same thing at camp? And that was kind of, again, like that starting point of the anxiety and the fear of things that would come. And but what I noticed here at the beginning first is she admitted this to her parents. She had somebody that she communicated this feeling and this emotion with. This, okay, I don't think this is true, but I'm communicating this, and this is why I feel this way. And she's able to talk it out with her parents. Which also, one thing is very beautiful, because I don't know that I had the maturity and ability to talk to my parents that way when I was that age. But she talked it through. She had safe people. She knew she had someone she could count on to be real, authentic, vulnerable. And then again at the end, when she is in this game and she's now having her anxiety attack, as literally the things are happening, like, oh no, she's messed it up. She could lose her chance at what she was going for in this game. Her friends, who she's at, again, we do the spoilers, right? So, but at this point, her friends and her have not been talking. So there's this tension already with her people. The people that she's been doing life with, she now found out will not be getting to do life with at the same level. And they notice her. in her panic attack. They notice that something is wrong, and so they go and they check on her. And there's this mutual understanding that there's something wrong, there's not okay. Riley, again, has this insane maturity to be able to tell all of these things that have been wrong and why she's been acting this
She's
way.
13 going on 30.
Yeah, no, seriously. She knows that if she just explains all of these things to her friends, this is why, and she knows she can ask for forgiveness, and it's okay if they don't forgive her. And it's this beautiful moment of them actually forgiving her, and they're okay again. They're going to talk. They're going to feel it all. Like, they understand where they're at. But I think, again, there's just such a beautiful example for us as believers to recognize that is what we were created for. Why was Riley struggling this entire time as she's fighting her friends, fighting who she thinks she's supposed to be? Who she was surrounding herself with were people that didn't actually care about her well-being, care about who she was becoming, because they didn't know her. Her friends knew her, and that's why I had so much struggle with her, because she wasn't being true to who they knew she was. And to be able to come to that other side of having Christ followers surround us, right? Being with people who encourage us, who call us out when we're not being like Christ, when there is something that we're doing that's outside of that. We were created for that on purpose. So there is a reason why, to a certain sense, we can't do it alone. Because that's not how we were created. We weren't created to walk life alone. We weren't created to feel things alone. We weren't created to be alone. So I think that's the first lie that we have to be able to deal with in our life, is that we're meant to be alone, or that we're always going to be alone, or we deserve to be alone. Because that's not true of who we are. That's not true of our identity in Christ. And really, truly, exactly how Riley shows us, our emotions can't be fully processed until we're vulnerable, we're real with the people around us, but the people who know us, who we've allowed to see who we actually are, and can call us out on these things. Because I think that's also why it's so beautiful in the forgiveness process. How can I sit across the table from my husband and forgive him for things that sometimes really like upset me? Because I know him and I know who he is in Christ. I know his intentions. And it's not that forgiveness is always easy or that it's always a natural thing. But when we have this relationship with people, there's just another level of that ease of forgiveness. But it doesn't come from my ability, but the ability through Christ and how I see people, I think is just really beautifully portrayed in that.
It's also
piece.
because I'm cute. That's why you can forgive me.
Sure.
You've got a face for podcasting, that's for sure.
That's so rude.
We used to do a video podcast,
And now we don't.
and now we don't.
Am I the reason?
No, you're not the reason.
Okay.
I'm the reason.
Hi.
I am
it's
the
me.
walrus.
I'm the problem.
Cuckoo,
It's
cuckoo.
me.
Speaking of music references, is it time for Jordan's song recommendation of the week?
Is it Disciple?
It is not. You got one more guess.
Is it Alter Bridge?
No.
That was a good guess.
It does start with an A. I'll give you a guess. I'll give you a guess.
Aerosmith.
No. Also a good guess. You're not going
I
to
have
guess
actually
it.
no
Yeah,
idea.
no. It is Avenged Sevenfold.
Really?
Yes. It is a song called Almost Easy,
Oh, I know that one.
All right.
because the purpose of the song is it's almost easy to forgive, and it's almost easy to come back and to reestablish relationship and connection. It's actually a really good song.
Yeah.
Like,
Really not Jesus
We might,
following band.
we might need to do that one on Songs That Preach at some point.
Ooh.
Not a bad idea. I think when I was in the movie theater and I saw that scene, I wrote down, I have it right here in my notes, forgiveness, powerful, everyone wants it, everyone needs it.
Mm.
And I think, like, as believers, you want to, like, level up your forgiveness. You do what the friends did. Because, like, they were not in good standing.
Yep.
Like, Riley wronged them in a big way. And in Riley's moment of, freaking out, anxiety attack, needed community, and had isolated herself because of her own actions and her own decisions, the friends came over to her and checked on her anyways. And made it possible for the forgiveness to be asked for and given. Like they took the step. It wasn't Riley that took the first step, right? The friends that had been wrong took the first step. In church, like it's really easy for us to be like, I'm open to forgiveness, but I'm not taking the first step. And Jesus is like, hey.
I mean, we've talked about like how guy characters have had their boys. She had her girls.
Yeah. Yeah. And they stepped up.
In a big way.
And saved a friendship, right?
So who
like,
do you need?
Because if they don't step in that moment.
So who do you need to reach out to that has wronged you? I'm not asking like.
Or who do you just
us three.
need to be okay with them seeing who you are?
Well, it's just like, even if you know that they're not going to reach out first, do you love them enough to be the bigger person?
Yeah.
Mm.
And it's not even like, because they didn't go over there to be like, hey, let's hash it out.
Right.
It was just an act of kindness.
Yeah, it's
Just
you
like,
know,
I'm
you good?
here for you. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, hey, you're not doing okay. And we can tell what's going on.
Because then I can say here too, that moment didn't have to happen for that still to be beautiful. The forgiveness piece didn't have to happen in that moment for it to still be beautiful that they went up to check on her.
Right.
Because we can still be in a place where, you know what, I'm really, really upset with you still. And I don't know if I'm at the part of forgiveness, but I do still care for you. And I want to make sure that you're okay.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. Hey, I think that's a good place to end the conversation today. This was fun. I'm glad we did this emergency podcast. Priscilla, thank you.
You're welcome.
This is great. Audience, if you have thoughts,
Let us know.
hit us up on slide into them DMs on Instagram.
Don't say that.
Slide on in there.
Don't.
The water's great.
You're too old to say that.
Just slide to the left.
Slide to the right. Crisscross.
Crisscross. Okay, anyways.
Pop, real smooth.
And you can hop on over to our Patreon. Because here's the deal. I'm going to have a interview with Priscilla for 20 additional minutes. So I know listening to this podcast, you're like, you know what? How can I hear more of Priscilla? And the answer is you go to our Patreon
every time she talks, I think.
and check it out. And guess what? That one is video recorded. So not only will you be able to hear Priscilla,
you can see her.
You'll be able to see Priscilla. So that was a really good conversation. We actually already recorded it, but it will be released the same day this podcast comes out. And it'll be about how Christians can have a larger view for how God works within their own communities.
And how do they access the video again?
They go to Patreon. Pop Culture Redemption's Patreon. It's in the show notes. It's linked. Or you just go patreon.com/popcultureredemption.
There is also an app
Oh,
available on both iPhone and Android.
yes.
Download the Patreon app.
Certainly.
Check us out on Patreon.
Yes.
Sign up and you can get access into some really great content that's not free.
That's right. Some of the stuff is free.
Some of the stuff.
Some of the stuff. And some of the stuff's behind a paywall because that's what we're doing. And it's good stuff.
It's good stuff.
It's good stuff. We're not
this is
biased.
a great podcast.
Yeah. Thanks, Priscilla.
Got you. It's
Thanks
a great
for saying that.
podcast, lots of great content, and even greater conversations behind the paywall.
That's right. That's right. There you go. See?
Man,
Best
she
guest.
should do our advertising.
The best guest. All right. Well, again, check out our Patreon. Otherwise, we'll be back on this feed in 2 weeks with Dune Part 1.
With
Kim Evangelista.
it's going to be great.
It's going to be great. Until next time, remember, God is working in pop culture. Okay, bye.
Pop.